Hi, welcome to Training Mugs Java coding series. So in our previous session, we discussed about how do you work with array of primitives. So in this session, we talk about how do you work with array of objects, right? So let us quickly look at the agenda. So first, we'll talk about what is array of objects, and it is internally called as array of references. But we'll talk about what is this array of references versus array of objects, right? So and we also put some hands on working with array of objects. So we create array of objects, we manipulate the data, and we just try to understand how you can work with array of objects in detail. So first, we'll talk about what is array of objects. As we know that array is a group of similar type of elements. So now here, instead of storing primitives, so we'll store objects, right? So since arrays support similar kind of data, now here we are going to store the same type of objects inside your array. So but basically internally it is an array of references. It does not directly hold the array of objects. Okay, I'll talk about it in detail in a minute. So what is this concept of array of references? Now let us understand the syntax, like how you declare an array of objects. So internally an array of references, right? So same syntax, like we first define what is the type of objects that you want to store it in that particular array, followed by array syntax, and followed by a reference variable which basically points to that array. So let's see some of the examples. Suppose you want to create an array of products. So what we do, we just create product array. Okay, so with product list is going to be a reference variable. And similarly, if you want to create an array of customers, so then we'll take customer is going to be a class. Now array declaration favorite customers. So like that, an array of students, so top students from university, and again an array of students, and then an array of employees, product development group, right? So now here a very important point is it just an array declaration. So only a reference variable which can point to an array gets created, but not the actual array. So the same thing that what we have discussed in our array of primitives concepts. Now let us understand, but how do you create an object, right? So to create an object or instantiating an array, right? So we use a syntax called new followed by the type and along with the size of elements that you want to store it in that array. So if you see the example, suppose you want to create an array of products. So the products list is a reference, now which I'm now pointing it to is equals to new product of 5, right? If you look at this syntax pretty much looks like that you're creating a constructor, but it's not a constructor. So should be very careful about seeing when you're creating a constructor new product, you're going to provide parenthesis, but here it is not parenthesis, rather it is going to be the square bracket along with the size. So when you're seeing this new product of 5, an array of 5 product elements created. Now the question comes, are the objects actually created, or what is going to value, what are the values it is going to store in that particular array? We'll just see that in a minute. So now similarly, if you want to create an array of customers, so example 10 customers, so we'll say favorite customers is equal to new customer of 10. Similarly, top students from university is equal to new student of 100. An array of 100 students gets created. Now product development group is equal to new employee of 20. Now an array of 20 gets created on heap. Now the question comes, like, is it going to create 5 objects automatically, or what are it's going to have the values? Now let us understand that with memory mapping. First, we need to understand whenever you create product list is equal to new product of 5, what actually happens, or what array gets created, and what are its default values, right? So if you understand the same memory management that what we have discussed in our previous notion, so let us assume that product list is going to be created on stack, which is going to be a reference which will point to an array which will be created on heap. So now if you can look at that, there is an array with 5 elements got created, and the values, if you can look at that, the default values are null here. Okay, so I already explained you in my previous video that any variable that is going to stored on heap by default will be initialized. Since array is stored on heap, all these values are initialized to the default values. So why null? Because the kind of a data you're storing is an object, so by default object type will be initialized to null. And surprisingly, if you can see, all values are stored as null, but none of the product object is yet created. That is what very important. So when you're creating a new product of 5, it is going to create an array of 5 elements, but each one of the value of that is going to be null by default. So it is a program responsibility to point each and every one of these elements to point to a product object. So based on the declaration of your product class, that is what very important one. So with this said, we'll just try understanding how do you initialize or instantiate and initializing each one of the product. So if you can look at that, this is what your product class. So let us assume that it is having a properties of ID, name, price, rating, company and category. And if you look at that, it is having an argument constructor with all these properties. So if I want to create an object of product, since I have only argument constructor, I need to pass all the values of this to instantiate one product object, right? So since I do not have any no argument constructor, I cannot just create an object saying that new product with empty parenthesis, right? I can't create it because I enforce here to have only argument constructor. Now let us see that what actually happens. As we see that so far only the references are created on arrays, no product object is created. Now how do you instantiate or how do you initialize each product object to point to each one of the reference? So here how you create product list of 0. The first very element, which is index with 0, is equal to, so previous value was null. Now we are making it to point to a new product object by saying new product. And since we have an argument constructor, we will pass all the values like one MacBook Pro and some pricing, some rating. So if you can look at that, I have given the values for 4.5F. Why? Because the rating is float. Whenever you pass any value for the float, should not pass 4.5 by default, right? This is going to be a double, so you're going to get a compilation error there. So you have to pass by giving F because you have given a float value. Very important. And then the string company, I've given Apple. My first string category, I've given laptop. So this is a way how do you instantiate the first index to point to the product object. Now let us understand how or what actually happens in the memory. So now if you can look at that, I have just instantiated my first array element to new product with all these values. Now let us understand the memory management. Now same product list, which is now pointing to an array initially, which is having all values. But if you can look at that, since the first element you have instantiated to a product object, it doesn't have null value, right? So now this will again act as a reference, which will point to an object on heap. Okay, so with all these values. Now the green one, what you're seeing is basically a product object which is having all the properties. So similarly, it is a programmer's responsibility to initialize all the other products. So if you want to instantiate the initialize the other product, so you have to say product list of 1 is equal to new product with all the values. Similarly, product list of 2 is equal to new product with all the values. So each one of this now will point to another actual object which contains the properties. So otherwise they by default will have only nulls which are of no use, right? So with this said, we just understood how basically we work with array of objects. Now let us go into our STS, our IDE, for understanding this entire concept by writing some code. I open my STS, let's start writing the code. So here I'm taking a new project to demonstrate since it's a new topic. I'm just creating a new package here. I'll just select this as objects and click on finish. Now I'm going to create a new Java class which I'm going to call this as product, right? So now let me create some of the properties for this product. So I'm just creating private int ID, private string name of the product, and private double price of the product, and private float of rating, and private string company, and private category. So these are the properties of it. So now what I do is I'll just quickly generate the constructors. So first I'll generate the constructor using fields. So make sure that that here I'm not using a no argument constructor, and I just want to set the values of each product object that I want to create, by using this constructor argument. So that's the reason I'm just selecting this, or if you want you can create an argument constructor also, but you have to define your setters and getters method. I'm just going to create the getters and setters methods too for this to get the properties of these values. Just go to source and then generate getters and setters for this. Since we are setting the values, either I can use my constructor or I can use the setter method for doing it. I'll just click on select all and just click on generate. So this code will generate the complete setters and getters for each and every one of the property. And also I override my toString method whenever I want to print a product. I want to print the complete description of the product instead of just printing the hash code of it, right? So to generate the override toString, I'll just go to source and then here you have quickly override toString method, right? Generate toString method, right? So it's up to you what are the properties that you want to select for method to override. Here I'm selecting all the properties to generate it. So this is a way that it will override the toString method. So I just created my product class with these properties, with the argument constructor, with the getters and setters. Let us quickly create an array of this product. So to create an array of this product, I am just going to create another class called product array test, and here I'm selecting my main method. It is always important that you put your models, these we generally call them as model classes, as a separate single plain old Java object, which we call them as POJOs. So which simple contains only the properties with getters and setters and then the constructors. So now here I'm just going to create my array of products. As we already discussed in the theoretical session of this video, that how do you declare an array of product. So first I'll just define what are the type of my elements that here I'm going to create product objects. So I'm just going to create an array products. So now here I'm just simply say products list. So here only a reference gets created, no array gets created, as we understood, same concept that what we discussed in a previous video too. So now how do I instantiate, right? So for instantiation of this array, I'll just select products list is equal to new product of the size, right? So here I can give product of 5, so that what actually happens, an array of 5 product element gets created. But I know that each one of this element which is there in array is a null object, right? So there is no product object is created it. Example, suppose if I want to print products list of 0. Okay, so now whenever I run this program, what is the output that I'll get? I'll just run it, run as Java application. So now I'll get null. So means in the first index it by default points to null, right? So if you can understand the pictorial representation, an array will be created on heap. By default all the values are null. So there is no product object existing yet. This is what one of the very important point to understand whenever you work with array of objects. So here there is no object of product is yet created. Only an array of product is created where we need to store our product objects, right? So how I'm going to store? So suppose if I want to access any one of the values, so suppose I want to get the name of the product, right? So you'll be surprised to see that your compilation works fine whenever I access an element, even though products list of 0 is null, right? So that's what the difference between the compilation and then the execution, right? Compilation always checks only for the syntactical analysis. So according to the syntax, so it knows that product list of 0 is a product object. On the product object, you have getName method with a public accessibility so that I can access this data. So that's what your compiler knows. Your compiler doesn't know whether it is pointing to null or any object existing. So what will be the output whenever I run this code? Suppose I save this and then whenever I run this code, what I get a null pointer exception, because product list of 0 is null. On null, you're trying to access getName, so obviously it is going to generate null pointer exception. One of the very important question that will get in a lot of interviews or in a lot of certifications, right? So this we're not interested in, so we need to initialize all our products list. So how do I initialize? So one way of initializing it, I need to initialize each and every one of the product lists by instantiating it by using new product. Now if you can look at this, here I'll use a constructor. In this declaration or instantiation of an array, we are not using any constructor. This is what the array instantiation. Now in each element, it has to point to a product object so that we are creating it. So but when I create it by product, you always will get an error. Why? because it clearly says that there is no argument constructor in product class. If you go and then see, there is no argument. We have only argument constructor. That's the reason what we have to do. Whenever you create an object of this product, you have to use only this constructor. That is what the argument constructor means, right? So that's the reason you're getting an error. So what I can do, I can pass all the individual values, the ID, name of the product, I'll just give MacBook Pro, and the price of this I can give some value which is a double, and rating. Okay, suppose I'll just give 4.8. okay, so then let me give the company name. I'll just give company name as Apple, and then the category as the laptop. Okay, so let me give it as a string, and we'll see what actually happens. Still you'll get a compilation error. Why? Because this, if you can look at that, the 4.8 is a double, but if you go to your product class, you just mentioned it as a float, right? So by default double cannot be casted to float, so you'll get a compilation error here. So this also, a lot of times you'll get the interview question, they'll pass the double value and then they declare here it as float, which by default going to generate a compilation error, right? So here I just need to do a typecasting, okay, or I can do this by using float of this, or maybe in a simple way I can just simply put a suffix f here, which solves my problem. Now you can see that now the constructor is proper, which is expecting the expected elements, and then products list of 0, the first one is now pointing to the actual object. Now let me try to print the same statement what I printed though. So now let me see what actually happens. Do I get the null pointer exception again? Definitely no, because I made my product list of 0 to point to a product object. So product and it exists on the product object. I'm calling get name, so it is going to give me MacBook Pro. So let me run this, Control S, TD, and I'm going to run my code. So what I got is MacBook Pro. So this is the way you need to instantiate and initialize your all array elements with the different products, like new product, other with the different values. So this is a tedious task, or if you want to create all these array together as we understood, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm just commenting all these things here. So you get a compilation error here, so no problem, I'm going to fix it. So I already have some of the products which are already here. So what I do, I just create this products list by using this syntax. Okay, products list is equal to new product. Okay, so whenever you define an array of objects of a specific type like new product, and again here I'm using an array symbol, but here I want to instantiate all the values. Okay, so now this is what a legal statement which it says that whatever the number of product objects you'll pass, all of them to create an array of those product objects. Because I did not pass anything, by default it compiles, but the length of that array is going to be 0 since you did not pass any elements, right? Now what I want to do is I want to pass all the product objects. So here I have already created the product objects here. I'll just simply copy here and paste it here just to save our time. Instead of typing it, I'll just explain you what I'm doing it. I'm not doing anything great, so I'm just using this same new product by passing the ID and name of the product and price of the product with rating and company and then category. If you can look at that, I have mobiles and then I have laptops which I have given here with the IDs from 1 to 11. I have complete 11 products with the different prices, with a different rating, different companies, and then different categories, right? So the idea being taking this is I want to do some manipulation on this array to get some hands on how do you manipulate array of products. So never ever practice with simple examples like taking some integer elements and then try to manipulate it. That does not give you complete hands on. And the recommendation is take a real-time example and put some data and then take some scenarios, some requirements, and then start writing your code, right? So that's a way that you'll get hands-on experience of working with this. Now let me run this code again. I'm just saving it here. What actually happens, an array with all these products will be created, right? So now if I want to see how many products are created, so what I'll do, I'll just simply say product list dot length, right? So this length will give me how many number of objects are there in this array. So obviously I have 11 elements, so it is going to give me the 11, right? right? So I'm just running my code. So if you can see that I got 11, and then the first list of 0.getName, I got this MacBook Apple iPhone XR 64 GB. This was the first element, right? So this is a way that you basically instantiate an array of products, and this is what optional. Okay, it will give you more readability to understand what kind of a products that you're going to store. Suppose if I delete this, still it works. Okay, so whenever I run this code, you'll get the same output. Okay, so but this will give you more readability. I'll suggest you to write the code like this, which will give you more readability to say what kind of an objects that you'll have inside this particular array. Now let us try understand how do you access an individual element. We know that we always will access it from the index starting with 0 to 10, right? So since I have 11 elements, so the index will be 0 to 10. So there are different ways that you can access these elements. One way of accessing it by using this normal for loop, where I'll create integer I is equal to 0, I less than products list dot length. So you guys know about this, but I don't recommend you to write the code like this. It might be helpful whenever you want to manipulate based on a certain requirements. You want to access index based to have a more grip, right? But if you want to access all product elements, so I recommend using for each statement, right? So we know that for each statement is quite easy or more readable for accessing all elements in the products list, and you have to use this for each statement whenever you want to manipulate or access all elements in the array. So now here I have product in product list. Now I can access all the elements. Now let me print system.out.println, and then I'll just simply say product. Okay, so because I have overridden toString method, it is going to print with along with all the properties, right? So let me save this and then run this code. Now if you can look at that, I have overridden toString method. I'm not accessing any one of the property, but here if you can look at this toString method here, which we define, it is going to print the product with ID and all the stuff. If you can look at that, each and every product is printed like this. So you can use the format specifiers for printing these values, which will see them in our additional videos or upcoming videos to understand more manipulations on this array of objects, because it is very, very important. So this is a way how you create an array of products, and then how you access the individual element in a product array, and then how you access all the elements by using the for each statement, right? So try to work on the similar kind of example. Take any one of the example like employee, student, and try to put some hands on to understand how you create an array of those objects, and then how you access, right? Suppose we also know that if you are trying to access any element beyond the index, example I'm just accessing products list of 11, right? .getName, there is no compilation error here, but rather we always know that it is going to generate an array index out of one exception, right? So this also you need to be very careful whenever you are answering your interview questions. Okay, so hope you guys understood this topic. Now let us look back into the quiz again. So guys, answer this quiz again. So based on the topic what you understood, I'm just giving the options, so you can go through each one of this and then answer your questions in the comment section below, and then cross verify along with the document that what I provide with the clear explanation of this. So question number 3, so don't forget to mention your answers in the comment section. We'll see like who will get the 100% marks.